There are many insights I uncovered from my Torah study this past week, but there are a few that I want to go over. And one of them is that in the letter that Kepha writes, he says that there are those who take Paul's words and distort them unto their own destruction, as they do the scriptures. So this isn't just something that happens in Protestant Christianity where they tried to make Paul into some antinomian freak. This also happens in Judaism, where scholars and polemicists such as Rabbi Tovia Singer try to turn Paul into an antinomian that they then own. But what do we know? The Apostle Shaul kept the law and the prophets, and we're going to see some evidence of this in this video. And 119 Ministries recently made a video on this, and I think they did a phenomenal job refuting these claims. But Tovia Singer is a perfect example of someone who not only distorts the words of Paul, but distorts the Tanakh. For example, in Isaiah chapter 52 and verse 13, we read of Yehovah's servant, the Mashiach, the Messiah. And there are many in Judaism, including him, who say it's not about the Messiah, it's about Yahweh's servant Israel. And yes, we do see Israel mentioned as Yehovah's servant in the book of Isaiah. However, we also see a suffering Messiah who takes on the illnesses of the world. And this is in the rabbinic midrashes, just in case you guys didn't know this, that the Messiah is understood as being one singular person that's mentioned in these chapters. Not only that, but Rabbi Tovia Singer has mentioned Ezekiel chapter 45 in verse 20, where the Nasir, the constitutional prince, offers up a sacrifice for himself and for the people and says this is something that the Messiah does as a function. But if you have a proper interpretation of Tanakh, you understand that the Messiah will not be a sinful man. So if you actually take the time to read the Midrashes, you'll find that there are a lot of concepts in them that align with what we see in the Brit Hadashah. You'll probably be asking yourself as you're reading the Midrash, if you know the New Testament, are you sure this isn't the New Testament? Am I sure this isn't the New Testament? But it's interesting because they also have Midrashes about Yeshua hating, where there was a rabbi, there's a story of one, who was bitten by a snake and refused to be healed in the name of Yeshua, and he ended up dying. And other rabbis applauded him as a martyr for the religion of Judaism, and that he was righteous for not accepting the healing. You know, we have a Hebrew phrase or term which is used to describe those who believed in Yeshua and the law and the prophets, and they were called the Ma'aminim. And so you have the Birkat Haminim, that's the Orthodox curse of those who are sectarians, those who believe in Yeshua Messiah, but also keep the commandments. So they turned something that meant a person who believed in spiritual matters into being some sort of derogatory term, just by taking away the ma'ah part. You know, one of the things Protestants really misunderstand, and I think we may have gone over this before, is Matityahu, or Matthew chapter 5 and verse 22, where Yeshua says, "But I say unto you, his disciples, that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment," or in other words, the Sanhedrin. Everybody knows what the Sanhedrin is, because the Sanhedrin is the high court, the Beit Din Gadol in Hebrew. You had your individual congregational Beit Dins, and then you had a second level of Beit Dins in the land of Israel, and then you had your high court. So Yeshua is saying that the Sanhedrin was given power by Yehovah Elohim to make righteous judgments on civil matters that related directly to Torah, and to use Torah to interpret Torah, and to use Torah specifically and not their own man-made doctrine. And he says, "And whosoever shall say to his brother, Racha, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, thou fool," in other words, this is a reference to the Psalms, where it talks about someone who is not a ma'amin, because a ma'amin is aware of spiritual matters, and the fool says in his heart, there is no Elohim, shall be in danger of hellfire. So when our Orthodox brothers and sisters are commanded to curse us, and they say these benedictions I believe there are about 18 of them. And one of them is the Birkat Haminim, the curses. Well, what are they doing? They're suggesting that we're not aware of spiritual matters, that we're heretics because we believe in Yeshua Messiah. And so the person saying Rakah and the person being angry at his brother without a cause are clumped into the same group that is subject to the Israelite court system. It's the same way that we have a 3-tier court system in the United States. We have the district courts, the appellate courts, and the United States Supreme Court. And brothers and sisters, let's not do an eisegesis on the word of Elohim. Let's do an exegesis. You know, a lot of Protestants say, well, I just read the Bible. There's no need to interpret. I just read it and I get it. No, brothers. No, sisters. You must read and interpret. But one thing that the Protestants are guilty of, whether they believe it or not, one thing our rabbinic brothers are guilty of, whether they believe it or not, is reading things into the text that don't exist. Example number 1, the rabbis say the scriptures read like a code. So when we do our midrash, we can take things completely out of their historical and immediate textual context and derive a meaning that imposes a new law on people that we deem fit as law. And that's Torah law. Because one of the principles of Pharisaism is that you believe that there are 2 Torahs, the written Torah and the oral Torah. Okay, that's wrong. Number 2, Protestant Christians will suggest that because there's a mention of people getting together and gathering on the first day of the week, and because Yeshua rose again on the first day of the week, even though they may be right about these 2 things, that somehow means that Yahweh's day of worship changed from Shabbat or Sabbath to Sunday. This is wrong. In Acts chapter 20 and verse 7, we read, "And upon the first day of the week, when the disciples came together to break bread, Shaul, or Paul, preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow, and continued his speech until midnight." Now, we see references in my Bible of Deuteronomy chapter 16 and verse 9. Why? Because when they gathered here, this is the day of Yom Hanafat HaOmer, the day of the wave sheaf offering. So the emphasis isn't that this happened on the first day on some random week. The emphasis is that this is the first of weeks of Sabbaths, Ton Sabbaton, which means that it's the first day of the Omer count leading up to Pentecost, and there's contextual evidence for this. Ton Sabbaton translates to morrow after the Sabbath in different New Testament passages, but it's significant here because it means the morrow after the Sabbath, after the Pesach. And in Leviticus 23, we read about the commandment that needs to be fulfilled on that day. In verse 14, we read, "And ye shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the selfsame day that ye have brought an offering unto your Elohim. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. And ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath," that's a Sunday, "from the day that ye brought the wave sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Sabbaths shall be complete." So the reason why the disciples are breaking bread on this day is because they're celebrating the day of the wave sheaf offering. They're celebrating first fruits by taking bread and eating it. The bread that is from the crop of that year, though. Not old crop, but new crop, because now they're being given permission to indulge in it. Verse 16, we read of Acts 20, "For Paul had determined to sail by Ephesus because he would not spend time in Asia, for he hasted if it were possible for him to be at Jerusalem the day of Pentecost." And this is one of the pilgrimage feasts, so he had to go to Jerusalem as an Israelite male. So we see Luke skipping in the narrative from day 1 of the Omer count to day 50 of the Omer count. And day 1 of the Omer count is the same day that the Messiah Yeshua rose again. But it was to emphasize worship that centers on the feast and not a change in law.